Albuquerque.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's actually the southwest quadrant of Bernalillo County. So
Well,
appreciate your deference to my area, and we'll go ahead and vacuum up any capital that may come forward in any of your future sessions. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
well, I want to take note that Senator Padilla has put a sport coat on for this afternoon's session, so we're fortunate to have him with us, all dressed up and ready to go. Okay, so we're, do we have the first?
Particularly you are, Mr. Chairman.
So do we have the first presenter available? Nicole?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, Ms. Martinez, thank you for being with us. We have with us this afternoon fellow legislators, Nicole Martinez, who's Executive Director of the Mesilla Valley Community of Hope. I said Mesilla, didn't I? Well, it's early. I'm still, so anyway, thanks for being with us, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Nicole Martinez. I am in Las Cruces, and we are at the Mesilla Valley Community of Hope, and I appreciate the opportunity to go ahead and talk about veteran services that we're providing in Las Cruces. Our organization helps people who are experiencing homelessness. So that's including anyone, veterans and civilians alike. But I'd really like to focus on some of the veteran services that we provide here at Community of Hope and what that snapshot looks like right now, especially during the pandemic. If I could go to the next slide. So some of the overarching services that we provide to everyone who is homeless or near homeless here. We have temporary shelter. We have Camp Hope, which is an outdoor tent shelter that we've been operating since 2011. We provide housing assistance, so rental assistance to people that are about to become homeless or that we're rapidly rehousing into their own apartments. We help people obtain income through several different ways that I'll get into a little later. Case management, behavioral health. We have day shelter as well, so we have laundry and showers. Last year here in Doña Ana County, we served 2,744 people. We were able to house 570 people, including 150 children. Next slide, please. Last fiscal year, we served 317 veterans. That was up from the year before, which we served 274. We have an apartment complex that is owned by the Mesilla Valley Public Housing Authority, and in about 2008, we signed a memorandum of understanding with them to house only homeless veterans at that complex. There are 22 units, and I have a staff person located on site, and it has really helped us to seamlessly transition veterans who are experiencing homelessness into a set-aside apartment. For example, we housed a veteran who had been accessing services for 16 years at Community of Hope. He had an honorable discharge. He went between the Gospel Rescue Mission and motels for many years. He then came to the temporary outdoor shelter of Camp Hope at Community of Hope, and we were able to house him within 1.5 months. We do see newly homeless veterans coming in all the time. And especially right now, we have significant funding to assist people that are at risk of becoming homelessness, and especially our veterans due to COVID-19. We also have a program that's called Intervention Supportive Services for Veterans and their families. That helps us to provide behavioral health to any of our veterans who are on the streets or who are transitioning into their own apartments with mental health therapy. Last year, we had 652 visits by our homeless and near homeless veterans for mental health services. Next slide, please. The city of Las Cruces, our mayor, Miyagashima, did accept the challenge to end veteran homelessness many years ago. And at that time, we partnered with the city of Las Cruces, and we discussed how much it would take for us to end homelessness rapidly in Las Cruces. And the city of Las Cruces did step in and help us to do a surge to house as many veterans as we could, which helped us to get to an operational zero level of serving homeless veterans. Doesn't mean that there are no homeless veterans. We do have homeless veterans. In fact, if I were to say that we didn't have any, one would walk right through the door. But what that means is that we got our numbers so low that we can house any veteran that comes through our doors within 30 days if they find an apartment that they like that's available within 30 days. But we have reduced our numbers significantly. We partner with DAV, VFW, the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. We've definitely utilized their service advocates, United Military Women of the Southwest, the Mesilla Valley Public Housing Authority, and HUD-VASH, which is a HUD-funded program that's subsidized housing for veterans. I know this is a lot of acronyms. Many of you may be familiar. We also work with the United Way, so we competitively go after funding to provide services for our veterans to obtain income benefits and, again, the housing and the therapy. We also partner with the VA and our local vet center, and we have hosted the stand down and also partner with any other entities that decide to host the stand down. I know that is going to look different this year as we get ready for that season coming up. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges that we've experienced in working with our veterans in terms of financial, we did used to receive funding from the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. And in 2016, that funding source legislatively was no longer available. So that is part of the time when we went to City of Las Cruces, and they stepped in and helped with funding that year. So we did not have any sort of disruption in services. It was really difficult to prioritize the money on the legislative level during that time. And we still don't have that as a grant source, but we have been able to increase the amount that we get from the VA so that, again, we don't have a disruption in services for our veterans. And again, we still partner with our DVS local advocates here. One of the things that's also been a really big challenge is, although we have a set-aside apartment complex for 22 veterans, we still have a lot of veterans that don't have housing. And I think, as is the case in many communities, there's a lack of affordable housing units. This year, several years ago, but this year it's coming to fruition, we partnered with our housing authority once again and the City of Las Cruces to renovate a 20-unit complex into 40 units. So in about a year, we believe that the Desert Hope apartments will be opening, and that will be providing permanent supportive housing for people who have been homeless, and it will also have a veteran preference. We did receive surge funding from the VA to respond to COVID. One of the things that they encouraged us to do, which is something we have often steered away from, was once COVID hit, was to put as many veterans that were outside in motels immediately. At the time, we didn't have very much SSVF funding. That's the funding from the VA. But they gave the surge so that we could remove any of the veterans that we had at Camp Hope or anyone that was sleeping outside and put them immediately in motels while we could look for long-term solutions and apartments for them. Typically, our veterans will opt to come to Camp Hope and stay there, and then from there transition into housing because the funding is so limited and motels are so expensive. But the assistance that we did receive from the VA has really helped us to, again, help as many veterans reduce their contact with other people, thereby reducing the spread of COVID in a really efficient manner. Next slide, please. Despite some of those challenges, we have continued to keep our designation as the 13th city in the nation to declare operationally ending veteran homelessness. Again, still have homeless vets, but we can operationally get them housed very quickly. We do have a veteran preference for all of our housing programs. And of course, we will continue to serve our homeless and near homeless veterans. And we want to make sure that we are prioritizing that and that they have a roof over their heads. And we believe that nobody should be homeless, and especially not those who have helped all of us to have the services and housing and privileges that we have. Next slide. These were just some of the past partnerships and recognitions that we've had. Again, really appreciate our ongoing relationship with Department of Veteran Services. I know Cabinet Secretary Griego has come to visit us, which was awesome to meet her and get to talk to her about some of the programs and what we're doing here. Next slide. This is a picture of the current apartment complex. So those the 22 units. They're one-bedroom apartments for formerly homeless veterans. We also outfit each apartment with donations that we receive. Next slide. This is one of our veterans that was at Camp Hope and we had some donors that came and wanted to give donations to any veterans that were staying at Camp Hope. Next slide. This is Red. Red was a veteran who was receiving services here at Community of Hope for 8 years. During the last about year and a half, he was volunteering, operating our shower program. The picture of Red on the left is what he looked like when he was on the streets. And then he finally one day, and we kept saying, Red, you got to go indoors when you're ready. But it is about their preference and their timeline, but it's our job to be ready and have that unit ready for them when they come to us. And for whatever reason, one day he said, I've had it, I'm ready. Please help me go indoors. I'm ready to trust again that I can make this happen. So we moved him into his own apartment. And about a week later, we had some donors who donated $25 gift cards to Walmart for any veteran that was housed. So we gave him that gift card. And a week later, he came by my office. And that's a picture of him on the right. I did not recognize him at all and asked, why the transformation and what happened. And he had taken that gift card. And first thing he did was go get a shave and get his hair cut. Next slide, please. And just some more donations. We partner really closely with our American Legion as well, and they've helped us out a lot with food for our veterans at Oak Street. We take food boxes as often as we can, make sure that they're distributed. And this is also just a picture of the resource room there, so we can have trainings. And we used to have a lot of social activities, but of course with the pandemic right now, that has really slowed down. Next slide. Here's a picture again of DAV and our VFW giving a donation. Sorry. Next slide. Here's a picture of our mayor. We had a veterans employment endeavor where anytime that a local business would hire one of our formerly homeless veterans, our mayor would recognize them with a certificate and thank them for hiring one of our veterans. We also have a day labor program that's a partnership with our city. So we can have people go out and perform day labor. They receive services from Community of Hope, they get food, and they get paid cash at the end of that day. So that's another way that we've been able to advance income for any of our veterans. Next slide. It looks like that might be the last one that I have. So again, thank you so much for your time and letting me present what our snapshot of veterans here in Las Cruces looks like. We'll continue to keep pushing as best we can to serve as many people as we can. We anticipate those numbers to be higher during the pandemic for the next year, but you have our commitment to serve as many of our homeless veterans as possible. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ms. Martinez, for your interesting and informative presentation. We have our first question from Senator Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Martinez, for the presentation. You mentioned that you help homeless veterans with assistance to find apartments. If they find it, do you help pay for the apartment, or is it kind of like the Section 8 program from the Department of HUD or the local housing authorities? In how do you help them with their rents? And for how long, Ms. Martinez?
Great question. We help in several different ways. So yes, if we have a veteran, we identify an apartment, whether it's at the one that we operate or a different apartment that they want, then we do the inspection, we work with the landlord, and then we pay for that unit. And that funding comes at this time primarily from the VA through the Supportive Services for Veteran Families. And we will utilize that funding while we try to get the veteran onto HUD VASH. So our programs mirror basically what Section 8 is, but it's set aside funding that's for homeless veterans to provide rent until we can get them a permanent solution, which would be something like HUD VASH. Several of our veterans that we work with, HUD VASH is not necessarily appropriate for them because they might need supportive services. They might need a case manager their whole life. They might need a payee or somebody to help make sure they have food, that their healthcare needs are taken care of. If they have any substance use issues, they're going to need a supportive service worker, which our agency provides. And so we would look more toward a permanent supportive housing program through the HUD Continuum of Care program, which we also operate. We've also had several veterans who have come in needing just mortgage assistance or rent. So they weren't homeless, but they're about to become homeless. And that particular funding, if we're preventing their homelessness, also can come from the VA, but also the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority. We have a grant with them that's called the Rental Assistance Program. And that will help us to also assist any veteran that comes in that has needs in terms of keeping a unit that they currently have as long as they meet income eligibility. And we have several veterans that do not have the discharge status that it takes to acquire that kind of assistance. And so in that particular case, we would just work with that veteran as if they were any other homeless person and put them into probably one of our HUD Continuum of Care or New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority funded programs that's for anybody who's experiencing homelessness.
And Mr. Chairman, Nicole, that was going to be my next question. Do you help them navigate the system? Because the system is so difficult to navigate that sometimes it feels that we set them up to fail.
Yes, it's a very difficult system, absolutely. And so that's why having our staff here has been really important, because we can get them from point A to point B. Whether it's helping work on perhaps a discharge status, that's when we really partner with, our Department of Veteran Services field staff. We also are able to help them apply for disability benefits. So we have representatives that do that through Social Security if they're not eligible for VA benefits. But we also help them with VA benefits. We also have access to the Squares program, which is a relatively new program. In the past, we were waiting. If a veteran didn't come to us with their DD-214, we had to wait until we could get that to verify that discharge status. But the Squares program now lets us log in and immediately we can see if that veteran is eligible for our program. So that has also helped to diminish the amount of time it takes us to get a veteran into an apartment.
And Mr. Chairman, Nicole, that's great. I really appreciate the work that you're doing for these veterans. I guess my final question is, if you don't have the capacity or the room to put them in your facility, and they get into another facility or into an apartment, do they sign a contract, and for how long is that contract? And do you, as long as they don't have the means to pay, you will honor that contract?
Yes. So, for example, if a veteran were to go into our SSVF program, that's a limited amount of rent that we would pay. And we would pay it as long as we could until we were able to get that veteran into HUD-VASH or into another housing program that might have just been regular public housing. But typically, the veterans will enter our programs and then transition either into HUD-VASH or into our own continuum of care permanent supportive housing. And so we would continue to pay that rent. The veteran signs the lease on their own. So it's not Community of Hope, but Community of Hope does sign a contract with that landlord and continues to work and honor that lease agreement and pay the portion of the rent that we're responsible for on behalf of that veteran.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator. Next up, we have Representative Rudy Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Nicole, for your presentation, and also for the great work that you're doing down at the City Hope. I know that at times it's been a struggle to stay afloat, especially when your funding was reduced or cut. Mr. Chairman and Nicole, do you have any ongoing projects to expand the City Hope?
Always. Mr. Chairman, Representative, so the one that I talked about is the Desert Hope apartments that we're currently working on. And our main focus right now has actually just been trying to keep everybody safe from the pandemic and housed as quickly as possible. That's sort of been our main project, I guess you could say, right now. The other projects that we had been working on at Camp Hope, we were putting structures around the tents to keep them out of the elements even more. But But at this time, as you know, people can't gather in groups larger than 10, and we don't want to put any of our volunteers or any of our clients at risk. And so we've sort of been holding off on some of those projects. But in terms of the regular work that we do every day, we have stayed open. We have not gone on lockdown. We continue to house people. We continue to meet with people face to face every day. And so it's just been an ongoing process.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, have you applied for capital outlay for your upkeep or expansion of your facility?
We have applied for capital outlay. We actually did apply for a solar project for our building. We share a building with Casa de Peregrinos. The way that our facilities are set up is that the Community of Hope proper, the agency that I am the director of, we have a lease agreement with the city of Las Cruces, and all the other agencies sublet from us. So any decisions that are made look like they may be coming from me as the leaseholder. But this was a partnership where we thought that it would be really great for Casa de Peregrinos, our local food pantry, to apply for more legislative funding and capital outlay to obtain and remodel a business that sat just north of our property, formerly called Horse and Hound, and it sat between the Gospel Rescue Mission and the Community of Hope. So there's a ton of traffic, homeless traffic, coming back and forth through the business. Finally, the business did relocate, and so we felt like a really good purpose for that building would be to move Casa de Peregrinos in there. So the city would obtain that property, which they are currently doing, and then obtain capital outlay to format that building so that they could accommodate all of the people that are in need of food. And it would then allow our building, the Community of Hope, to expand our footprint into the hopefully vacated Casa de Peregrinos building. We do currently have staff tucked away in corners in every office. I have, none of the caseworkers have their own offices. We're just really cramped for space, and this would be a really good move for our community as well as for the agencies and the people we serve. So yes, there is some capital outlay requests surrounding outfitting that particular building. And then again, the Community of Hope, I applied for a big solar expansion, implementation here at Community of Hope because our utilities are just so high. And in anticipation of taking over Casa de Peregrinos' building, it means that our utilities would then double. We also did receive capital outlay. It's going to get started in about a month. We hope to redo the flooring in here, which has completely disintegrated and cracked. And then we have a few other items on the capital outlay registry, but we're trying to be conservative because we know the legislature has been just amazing in the amount of funding that we have received to respond to the pandemic.
Well, thank you for that update. So you're also working with Casa Peregrinos on their food bank storage?
Yes, it won't be storage. It will be they're going to move their entire outfit into that vacant building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. And again, thanks for what you're doing for veterans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Martinez. Any other questions from any legislators? I have a couple of quick questions. For Ms. Martinez, you mentioned that you were the 13th city recognized for declaring an end to homelessness. What's the criteria to get that designation?
Mr. Chairman, yes. So again, it's to operationally end veteran homelessness. And what they looked at is what were our numbers when we started and what did we get those numbers down to? And are we able to house any homeless veteran that walks through our doors within 30 days? Do we have the services available, the funding available, and the resources? And we do. So we significantly reduced our numbers. Again, with the help of the city of Las Cruces, we got our numbers down to, I think, about 0. And then we continue to have veterans that would come to our agency, but because we got our numbers so low, and we have continued to receive funding, we have been able to house any veteran, like I said, that comes through and keep our numbers very low.
Well, that's impressive. It puts you in a fairly distinguished class of organizations serving veterans. I would
Agree, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I hope you would agree with that. So.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
And finally, how many employees do you have and what's your budget?
We currently have 22 employees. We are going to be hiring, so we typically fluctuate. We'll probably be somewhere around 25 by the end of the year. And our budget has continued to increase. Right now, it looks pretty swollen because of the pandemic response, making sure that we're addressing all the people that have had a loss of income so that we can help people not become homeless. So our budget is currently just under $3 million.
Okay, well, thank you for your answers. Any other questions from any other legislator? Senator Garcia. Representative. I got senator on my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nicole, Secretary Grego. The question I have is, Nicole, do you have any idea why they cut the funding on this program?
As it was explained to me, it was because the legislative funding just wasn't available during that time. It was not anything to do with how Community of Hope was operating with the funding. We used every cent of that funding on veteran rent. It didn't pay for any staff or anything. But it was a very difficult trip that Secretary Fox had to make at that time. And he came all the way down to face-to-face let us know, which could not have been an easy thing to do. And so, as it was explained to me, like I said, at that time, it was during time that the legislature just didn't have quite the funding that they did. And so they had to choose where that would go. And I'll turn that to Secretary Griego to expand.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
You're echoing.
I know. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure how to
Is that on our end or their end?
fix that. Let me try to lower down my volume. I'm actually not at home, believe it or not, Mr. Chair, representatives, members of the committee. I've been without power for the last couple of days in Albuquerque, so I took my computer over to my daughter's home.
Secretary,
I'm working out of
can I interrupt?
now, so.
That's much better, Madam Secretary.
Pardon?
Just saying that's much better.
It's
Madam
better
Secretary.
now.
Okay, thank you. The work that they do, the Community of Hope is invaluable, and she's partly correct. Secretary Fox, back I think in 2016 found himself in a predicament to where managing the veteran state home took a lot of the operational funds, and when he went in to ask for additional funding back in 2019, additional funding was not available. I had the similar issue for the first year that I got on board, and I was hopeful that there would be money for the Community of Hope, but unfortunately, based on the expansion request that we put in on the executive side, it was approved, but when it got over to the legislative side, it was not approved. So our department, our agency did not receive any money for either the Veterans Integration Center, the homeless organization in Albuquerque, or the Community of Hope. So we just didn't have any money, or any money was not allocated to our department to contract with either of these agencies.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And Nicole, Mr. Chairman, wasn't there, another program in Albuquerque that was canceled out for lack of funding also before this program on homeless veterans?
Mr. Chair, Representative Garcia, Originally there was what they call a rural veterans care program. It was a 2-year program, and some of the money was awarded to our state for us to contract with local homeless veterans organization. But it was a 2-year program. It wasn't. It was a 2-year grant. And once that money and the grant was over, the money that we did provide to them came out of our operational funds.
Mr. Chair and Judy, like Senator Martinez said a little bit ago, in my opinion, we are failing our veterans. We're setting them up for failure. We set them up for failure when they came out of the war zones. I came out of Vietnam in 1969, and I had a rough life, and other veterans that are here are having the same thing, and the newer veterans are coming out. We're going the same direction with them. I know it's not your fault on funding, but as a state, I feel that we are failing all our veterans, not in just the homelessness, transportation issues, outreach is terrible. We're gonna discuss a little outreach thing later on in the meeting, but the outreach to our veterans is just about non-existent. And every time we talk about it, Madam Chair and Mr. Chairman, Secretary, I'm sorry, we talk about the same thing of, we're going to do more outreach, and we're going to do this, and we'll do that. And at the end of the day, nothing seems to get done. We walk the walk, but we don't, we talk the talk, but we don't walk it. All we do is talk about it. And at the end of the day, we'll get together, other representatives that are veterans, and we have the same conclusion. We're not getting nowhere with what we're doing. And I know it's a big world, but we really need to address some of these issues, Mr. Chairman. And by cutting projects like Nicole's doing up in Las Cruces, how many other places are getting cut? Those are big issues and big concerns of mine, and we really need to address them. That's just my opinion. Like I said, I think as a state, we're failing our veterans.
Mr. Chair, Representative Garcia and committee members, I couldn't agree with you. I think the legislation needs to take a good look at where the money is being spent and allocate additional resources so we can contract with both these organizations, because they're the only two organizations that work directly with homeless veterans, and they do an amazing job with limited resources and limited staff. So I don't disagree with you, sir.
And Mr. Chair and Madam Secretary and Nicole, it's not your fault. It really isn't. But and I'll probably get in trouble for what I'm going to say next. But anyway, this last session, we couldn't even get a memorial introduced for veterans. How sick is that? We're introducing all these laws, and yet our veterans are getting thrown to the corner. We Representative Martinez was trying to introduce a memorial, and they won't let us do that. And that's not right. That's completely off of whack, but it is what it is. But it's not your fault. We need to get together as a state and work on these issues to address what we got facing us. And, either we're blind or we don't want to see it, or something's wrong with this system. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Garcia. Any other questions? Okay, again, thank you, Ms. Martinez, for your interesting and informative presentation. I want to commend you for being able to provide services so quickly to veterans in need. So unless there's no more questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is Juliet Sullivan, who is the administrator of the New Mexico State Veterans Home, and Chris Burmeister, who's director of the Division of Health Improvement, New Mexico Department of Health, who will give us a update on the New Mexico State Veterans Home. So, are these presenters available?
Yes. My name is Juliet Sullivan. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Chairman and committee. I am the administrator of the New Mexico State Veterans Home. And we sent our slides that they said that you guys will be putting up on the screen. So I don't know if you would like to have me present first and or Chris Burmeister, whichever you would like. Okay, so you have my slide up. Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll begin with mine.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Ms. Sullivan, you can be first.
Okay, so as I stated, Mr. Chairman and committee, my name is Juliet Sullivan, and I'm the administrator of the New Mexico State Veterans Home. I started here at the Veterans Home December 13th of 2019, became the interim administrator on January 1, and then was hired as the permanent administrator. I come with 30 years of experience in long-term care. My father is a veteran himself, and so it is an honor and privilege to be able to take care of veterans. So we'll begin with my slide. If you could go to the next slide, please. The mission statement here at the New Mexico State Veterans Home is to strive to provide integrated services in an atmosphere that promotes the physical, social, and emotional well-being of every resident. Every effort is to continuously improve care shall be made while safely assisting our vets and residents to live as independently as possible and as they choose, thereby assuring dignity and respect at all times. We will make an individual and team commitment to demonstrate professionalism and pride in all of our actions, maintaining an environment of accountability and responsibility to residents and each other. As a team, we proudly serve those who are already serving and already have. Next slide, please. So what do we offer here at the State Veterans Home? We are a 145-bed long-term care facility. We have 135 long-term beds, and we have 10 assisted living beds. We offer 24-hour skilled nursing care, domiciliary services to veterans, spouses of veterans, and Gold Star parents. We provide therapy 5 days a week, which includes our physical, speech, and occupational therapy. We have a full-time physician and a contract physician available to assist with coverage when our primary doctor is off. And we have one full-time pharmacist clinician and a contracted pharmacist to support as needed. Next slide. So who's our clients that we serve? What veterans? We serve veterans, spouses, widows of veterans, and Gold Star parents. Our average age of our residents is 81 for males and 85 for our women. The average length of stay for the period of June 1st through August 31st is about 52 days. Next slide. Before COVID, some of the annual celebrations that we celebrated here at the New Mexico State Veterans Home was on Memorial Day. We did a wreath lay on the grounds here before our flags, where the administrator would do a presentation about Memorial Day. On 4th of July, we had a volunteer who allowed us to take our veterans to her house to look at the fireworks celebrations from her house on her deck at the lake. And then every year they've had the Veterans Day celebration with the Veterans Day car show. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we're not able to do any of these celebrations this year, but look forward to after COVID when we can start the celebrations again. Next slide, please. Okay, so now during COVID, I'm going to show you guys a little bit, after COVID hit, we had to close down our campus to the public and really had to go into lockdown. As you can see, all of us staff have to come in. We come in dressed in our regular clothes, but everybody changes automatically into uniforms. So all of us are in uniforms. We do not take any of our uniforms home. All of our uniforms are sent to the dry cleaners. So when we come in, we change out of our street clothes and automatically go into uniforms. Throughout the day, I have my mask. I don't have my mask on right now because I'm the only one in my office. However, when we're in the hallways or in the office with anybody else, we place our mask on and we wear our mask throughout the day. When we enter into the building every morning, we are required to answer questions, get our temperature checked, and any answers to the 5 questionnaire of yes, if we have any signs or symptoms, if we've been around anybody that's been exposed to COVID, we automatically are swabbed for COVID and sent back home. And that's to protect not only our veterans, but also our other staff. So if you'll go to the next slide. With COVID, we've been doing a lot of window visits. We do about 25 to 30 window visits a week. If we're not doing window visits, you can go to the next slide. we're doing plexiglass visits, and this just started about a month ago. We were able to go to plexiglass visits depending on the area of the state that we're in, and if we're at less than 5% of infection rate with COVID. Sierra County only has, and 39 is a lot for our small community, but we're still under the 5%. So we are allowing the plexiglass visits. However, if we do come out with a positive, whether staff or residents, our plexiglass visits stop until we can do our 100%. And we do our 100% of testing for our residents and staff. We have to go 2 weeks with 100% negatives of residents and staff before we can reconvene our plexiglass visits. Next slide.
Good.
As we discussed, the State Ombudsman Office was fantastic at getting us equipment when COVID started. They provided us with Apple iPads and Samsung tablets so that we could do FaceTime visits with family and friends for our veterans. And so that's how we keep them engaged and connected with their families. Next slide. We have had to get very creative. So we do Ladies Corner and Nail Salon. This is provided by our internal staff, our activities department, and when I say ancillary staff, it's any of my other staff, social workers. We've just all jumped in to provide that emotional support to our veterans during this difficult time. Next slide, please.
Thanks.
One-on-one visits, in order to decrease the risk of emotional and psychosocial effects to our veterans. Our activity staff and ancillary staff are providing residents with one-on-one visits, whether it's taking them outside for fresh air, visiting them in their room, taking them to our turtle courtyard, which they love, going outside to the beautiful grounds that we have outdoors. We've just all become engaged, whether from administrator all the way down to, our frontline housekeepers and nurses aide. We're all jumping in to provide that emotional support to our veterans. Next slide. Currently, right now, with COVID, it has become difficult because we can't do any group activities at all. We can't do communal dining. We can't do group activities, so we've had to get very creative. So I'm currently working on trying to obtain a contract with a consultant here in New Mexico to just help my activity staff become more creative, see different things that we can do to meet the psychosocial and emotional support of our veterans during the pandemic. Next slide. We have been, I'm going to say, very blessed with the community, but also with the veteran support groups that we have, not only in our community, but in the state of New Mexico. I have had a lot of people contact me, from the Blue Star Mothers to our local community members, the VFW, there's so many people in our community. They've extended their support by providing word searches, puzzles, CD players, DVDs, music, TVs, and any other miscellaneous items to provide the stimulation to our veterans, whether in, their rooms or out, in the small, more intimate areas of the dining room. Right here is a picture that you can see of some of our county commissioners, our mayor, and some of the local volunteers that they went to Walmart, did some fundraising, and just brought lots of supplies for our veterans so that they could have some kind of engagement. Next slide. Hallway bingo. At first, we had to stop all of, our communal activities due to the high risk of COVID when we first started. They've allowed us to go back to hallway bingo, social distancing bingo. So what we do is we line the residents up down the hallway, and we have our walkie-talkies that we all use internally to get a hold of each other. And then we use a sound system, and so we call bingo through the sound system, and then we call it over our walkie-talkies so that we can have as many of our veterans participate in bingo that we can. So next slide. Haircuts. Because we can't allow any beauticians or barbers, we've been blessed with some talented activity staff that have volunteered to do haircuts for our vets. They received very positive feedback about their work. And we're hoping to hear positive things coming out of the 4 o'clock meeting to see if we can allow the beauticians and the barbers back in the building. Next slide. Hairstyling. Our activities department go to the residents' rooms and do the ladies' hair, do their makeup, just something to help lighten their spirits, to make them feel like they did, pre-COVID, when they could go out, to the beautician and get their hair done. So our staff has really gone out of the way to try and do different things. We've done line dancing in the hallway, social distancing, of course. So next slide. We have music in our sports bar. We had to completely close down our sports bar. And if any of you have come to the VA, we had a beautiful sports bar over here where they could come and enjoy the music. They had the booths. They could order pizza, hot dogs, popcorn. It was ran by volunteers. Unfortunately, we had to close down the sports bar and remove all of the poker tables and everything out of there for now. But we try to make that area where they can go and listen to their music in the sports bar and, just give them some kind of stimulation. Next slide. Reading mail with the residents. Our residents are receiving a higher volume of mail. Due to the COVID visiting restrictions, our staff read the mail with the residents if the resident requests that we assist them. We also have organizations, we have schools, we have daycares where they just are, mailing just bulk mail to our residents just to let them know that they're thinking about the veterans and thanking them for their service. Next slide, please. Social distancing group walks. We do outdoor walks. They are conducted by our activities staff weekly to allow our residents to enjoy the sunshine. And our courtyards remain open for those wishing to go outside on their own and enjoy the sunshine. Next slide, please. They are doing dominoes. It's usually with a staff member and one resident, one veteran. They do puzzles and card games and one-on-one with the residents. Next slide. And that's just a little bit about me. I began that at the beginning so that you would have a little bit of background about myself. Next slide. So changes to provide improved resident care. These were added in here. I added some systems after my first survey in the building. We implemented a nightly tracking system for dentures to prevent loss for our veterans. We are ensuring residents' plan of care accurately reflect the nutritional needs. So during the pandemic and COVID, it's been, concerned about residents' weight loss with not having the contact with their families as they would normally have. The VA was a very, we had tons of volunteers, tons of musical entertainers that would come. And after COVID hit, we had to stop all those visits. And so we've really tried to monitor weight loss closely so that we could ensure that we were doing everything we could to maintain the weights of our residents. They're monitored routinely and consistently, and staff have been trained to immediately report any weight loss of a 5-pound weight loss or gain. I notify my certified dietary manager as well as the physician so that they can look at our veteran to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain their weight. Next slide. We're looking at our resident-centered care plan. We're updating residents' care conferences to reflect the individual choice and preferences. We're making them more personalized. If the resident prefers to be called by their first name, then we're calling the veteran by their first name and making sure the care plan is addressed as such. We're also adding the preferences into the care plans to make sure that any staff member, whether we have staff or agency that come in, that they know what our veterans like and our residents like so that they can make sure that we're meeting their needs. We're utilizing consulting services to ensure the personal care plans are implemented to focus strictly on the resident care. We also went through the building after I started and looked at the acuity of the veterans that we had on the units. We exceed the regulatory minimum staffing requirements. We added nursing staff. We used to have Delta, Echo, and Foxtrot, and when I first started, they had removed echo unit. We've since added back echo unit and added a full-time nurse on that unit with 2 nurses aides to provide there's 2 CNAs and a nurse to about 21 patients on those units. And then we added a nurse in our memory care units to 2 CNAs, so it gives us a 3 staff ratio to 13 veterans. We're also in the process of hiring a psychiatrist to meet the psychosocial needs of the veterans, looking at the post-traumatic stress disorder and making sure that we're addressing the anxiety that comes, in collaboration with that PTSD, and making sure that we're taking care of the veterans' emotional support and psychosocial support. We hired a staff educator to help train and monitor proper care provided to our residents and our veterans, so that we make sure that their needs are being met, and if education is needed, our educator is going to bedside to do that. Next slide. Infection control and COVID safe practices. We are currently COVID free. We conduct weekly testing and surveillance per the CMS guidelines that Chris will talk about here in a little bit. We're mandated to do 20% of staff and 25% of our residents. We have quarantine and isolation units to control the potential spread, and they call that either the warm area or the step-down unit. Any of our patients who come in either from the hospital or a new admit to the unit, to the facility, are placed in our BC unit, which is our isolation unit, for 14 days. During that 14 days, we are monitoring them to make sure if there is any sign or symptom of COVID, that we swab them when they arrive, but then we swab them at about day 10 or 12 to make sure before we put them into our general population that there is no signs of COVID. We also, it's not on the slide, but we are checking our residents' temps and oxygen saturations per shift to make sure that we are staying on top of any signs or symptoms of possible COVID. And we've increased rounding and monitoring of staff and residents to improve the COVID safe practices. Next slide. Okay, sorry, that was a lot. Any questions for me?
We'll move on to the next presenter, and then we'll take questions for both presenters. So the next presenter is Chris Burmeister, who is with the Department of Health as the Director of Health Improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, senators, representatives, and also Secretary Griego. Thank you for having me today. I work for the Department of Health. I oversee the Division of Health Improvement, which oversees licensing and certification for long-term care and non-long-term care facilities statewide. And I have some general data and then some specific data to go through. I'm very proud to speak in front of you. Again, my grandfather was a Bronze Star recipient. My father also served. I was part of the effort of providing services to our veterans as they returned home and as they deployed, and providing therapy and services with them, and very proud to be presenting in front of this committee today. Next slide, please. We have 71 nursing homes statewide. I know we're focusing on the veterans home, and I'm sure as you are aware, statewide, we have veterans residing in nursing homes throughout the state and their families across the board. Our state has a very long, proud history of serving, and as a result, nursing homes statewide are an important care delivery system to New Mexicans. We have approximately 7,000 beds. Capacity generally reaches around 80 to 87%. We have 52 intermediate care facilities. Our department has 4 districts that oversee these healthcare facilities. We have about 14 surveyors. We do have vacancies right now. With the current budget crisis and issues, there are always worries about being able to budget our positions and be able to do our survey work accordingly. All 19 of our surveyors is the SMQT. That is a certification allowing us to survey federal, certified facilities, and we have one special focus facility in Roswell, which is a facility that struggles with compliance, that we provide additional survey work and support in order to get them into a higher level of compliance. Next slide, please. Our state response for COVID, which is very important. A lot of things changed when COVID hit. As I'm sure, as you guys have been monitoring and following, and compliance has also changed. CMS has prioritized at the beginning of this and suspended survey work. So that is on-site survey, our ability to be able to go on to the vet center or the other 70 nursing homes and do either a certification or complaint survey. As a result of this, within the first week, we deployed all of our survey staff to enter all long-term care facilities. So that was 71 nursing homes, 241 assisted living, to walk through and look at their infection control protocols. This is very early on in the crisis. Once the order came out that we were no longer going on site, and the whole purpose of our on-site visits to ensure that they were screening people, that they had supplies and all the necessary things to keep residents safe in these facilities. Once that did, we moved to a virtual survey and complaint system. We started completing off-site surveillance, which included video verification. We did 48 off-site complaint investigations and approximately 1,100 off-site infection control surveillance reviews. So to give you an example, we would call up the infection control nurse at the vet center, and we would run through questions, and we would have them send their logs of who's coming in. We would view them screening anybody coming into the facility, any staff. We would look at care, any kinds of care issues, answer questions, and then go through a very detailed protocol. Anytime a facility had a positive COVID case, we did additional outreach, which meant tracking how they were doing their percentages of testing requirements, what resources they had, PPE across the board. Our engagement was to provide consultation, assistance, and support in the case of an outbreak. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, got it. Thank you. March 4th, this is where the first information that we got from CMS that all our inspections were basically canceled. We were very limited in what we could do, but the order came out in March that we were allowed to do immediate jeopardy complaints. Now, as a result of this, we continued to not engage on-site work until we were prepared, and I'll talk later on the slide of what that preparation took place before going on site. We were very cautious. Our secretary was very cautious. We wanted to ensure that we were well prepared, well trained, and ready before we entered any facility. We did not want to be part of the problem. We didn't want to bring the problem to the facility. We wanted to ensure that we were ready to be able to do our workload. We conducted approximately 100 COVID nursing home surveys once we were able to go on site, and I'll go through the protocol of what our surveyors prepared to do that, including full PPE, surveillance testing of our staff to ensure that they are meeting all the requirements to be able to go in. We did conduct 3 immediate jeopardy deficiencies cited in nursing homes within this 6-month period of time. And as a result of our on-site survey work, we cited 21 total citations. Next slide. Thank you. This is just the percentage to give you an idea of COVID in nursing homes. We have 10 facilities now that are non or COVID free, and we have 60 that have had COVID, either active cases or they are now back to surveillance testing, where they have addressed and handled the situation. Next slide, please. This gives you the percentages of our survey and infection control surveys and where we've cited. Obviously, infection control has been the focus above and beyond the last 6 months. We did have federal surveyors assist us with some of our survey work, and you can see the percentages or numbers of surveys that we've conducted or infection control surveys that we've conducted. Next slide, please. Infection control non-compliance. What are the general things that we're seeing statewide? We've seen issues around staff not using appropriate PPE, cohorting or quarantining, as Juliet had spoken. These warm and cold zones are absolutely crucial when you have COVID positive. We know that one of the most dangerous areas of bringing COVID in is residents leaving. We have residents going for dialysis. So they go out to appointments, much needed appointments. They come back, they're put in those warm where they're quarantined so that they don't come into the rest of the population. And they're monitored for any kinds of signs and symptoms. Juliet did an excellent job of showcasing all the work that her and her staff have done inside the facility around social distancing. This has been very difficult because visitation has been a crucial element that has been very difficult for our veterans in the facility or any of our nursing home residents are dealing with, our families. As I'm sure all of you on the panel have heard, the family stories, and then also what people are experiencing in our nursing homes. Disinfecting, the governor provided a contract to allow a disinfecting company to go in and disinfect and clean every nursing home in New Mexico as an initial endeavor, and then ongoing support beyond that. Contingency staffing, a contract with staffing around the ability to be able to contract in case staffing issues arise. That's probably been one of the most difficult challenges that nursing homes have had, either staff becoming COVID positive or staff not wanting to do this work anymore. As we know, COVID, one of the highest areas is in our long-term care facilities, and then cleanliness of facilities. We've cited 12 citations for not reporting to the CDC. It is a requirement right now that all nursing homes report any COVID positive data to the CDC. And now I'm happy to say that we have 100% compliance of our nursing homes of reporting CDC data. Next slide, please. Percentages of non-compliance versus compliance in our nursing homes: 76% compliant with 24 non-compliant. And I've outlined those numbers in previous slides. Next slide. I am very happy to report that we have conducted 2 on-site COVID federal surveys at the Vets Home, and they were both citation-free. Next. Survey prioritization. The surveys that we provided, that we delivered in the Vets Home were these 3 to 5 day surveys, which are still our priority. On Fridays, we are delivered a list from the feds of what facilities we have within 3 to 5 days to enter and do a infection control, very detailed protocol. Usually 2 surveyors going on site and walking through the facility and drilling through the care areas. Facilities with immediate jeopardies are now a priority, so we're able to do those, and those are around care areas. Non-IJ high last certifications are also now a priority, and we are now able to go in and prioritize those facilities. Since survey certification work was delayed, we have facilities that are past their 15-month requirement for recertification, so we are now prioritizing those. And those all, in order for a survey to count, they cannot be telephonic. They must be physically done by surveyors, by federal certified surveyors. And we're continuing to work with our special focus facilities. Non-IG and medium 45s will be the next area of prioritization. And then any federal initial surveys and facilities with no outstanding complaints would be the last or oldest. Recertification would be our state survey prioritization. Next slide. In addition, facilities that have had penalties levied against them, we have a balance, money that is provided by the feds and kept in trust that we're allowed to allocate for improving the delivery of nursing care in New Mexico. And as a result of that, we were able to issue $167,000 for tablets to all the nursing homes to allow for contact between families and their residents in these nursing homes. Next slide. This is the CMP application that we tell any licensed nursing home that has the ability to be able to come up with a creative grant. And we we provide this to the feds, and if the feds approve it, they get that grant money. It's usually within a 1 to 2 year period. And we ask facilities to be creative. It's all about enhancing the delivery of care to veterans, nursing home residents. Next slide. That should be it, I think. One more. Are we still there? I think that was the last slide. There should be a thank you. Thank you. And I stand for questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'll thank both Ms. Sullivan and Mr. Burmeister for your very informative presentations. Thank you for being with us. And now I'll open up the questions. The first questioner is Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I have a question for our last presenter on the nursing homes. I know we have a lot of our deaths were from nursing homes. I think it's about a third of them, almost every day when I look at the report, and I do every day, there's more deaths at nursing homes. As you've done the contact tracing, it sounded like you guys shut things down really quickly, and I know we're actually one of the top in the nation. I think it was 7th or something like that in the nation for deaths in nursing homes. I can't remember how they worded that, but we've done well comparably to other states, but we still have a lot of deaths in our nursing homes from COVID. As you've done the contact tracing, what have you seen as to how it got in the first place? Because what I've been told is that it's got to be transferred from person to person. So how did it get there in the first place to spread if we shut down nursing homes the way you said we did?
Mr. Chair, Senator, thank you for the question. That's a little out of my scope. That's an epidemiology question, but I will attempt to provide what I know and where we've gone from there. First, I don't know if that statistic necessarily in comparison, we only have 71 nursing homes in comparison to other states in our region, which is Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, who have many more. We also have some very hard-hit counties. Our Native American area was particularly hard-hit, as we know, and a lot of deaths resulted in those areas. So the second part of your question, which is an important one, our engagement with the nursing homes from the very beginning of this has been substantial. We've had a good relationship with them. We continue to have a good relationship. We have right now, the state of New Mexico has contracted with an infection control specialist that is actually going on site and helping them with exactly what you asked about. Where is this coming in from? The things that we are aware of at this point is it is coming in from, and this is the reason why they were so aggressive in shutting things down, visitation, outside influences, outside things coming into the facility. So we have, I'm sorry, my door just opened. So all those restrictions, and we're also still very, very restricted in New Mexico. It's only in the last couple of weeks that they've allowed what Juliet has presented in these restrictions or in the visitations that have happened. And I think that is proven to keep us much safer and to have less of that happening right now. We know that it comes in because we have such an influx of staff coming and going. So our surveillance, problematic issues have been around asymptomatic residents, and then of course the testing component of what we're doing. We've been very aggressive with testing across the board. All our facilities participate in surveillance testing. I think this next round you're going to see even more testing towards staff that's going to help us allow facilities to make good decisions. Testing will mean that staff doesn't come in and potentially infect the facility. So all those kinds of interactions are the things that have been most aggressively addressed in New Mexico, to where I think that our facilities and our leadership have really taken aggressive actions to try to minimize that as much as possible. If you look at other states, other outbreaks, it is across the board of how it's happened. So they are still working in epidemiology. Our epidemiology partners in this are working on this tirelessly to try to figure out exactly pinpoint where that is. But we have been successful with the actions that we've taken with shutting facilities down. But this is a very, very difficult virus. And it tracks, it comes in very quickly. We find that when it hits one staff and one staff becomes positive, it trickles into multiple staff and multiple residents. And it is across the board. It is so aggressive. Now, on my secondary job outside of this, I do some of the rapid responses that you were kind of talking about in other facility types. And I will tell you of what I have seen in my responses when I call a home health agency or hospice agency. It is where they have contracted it at home, somebody they've come in contact with, and then they've gone to work. And that's where I've seen it in some of the rapid responses with that. So thank you. Any additional questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the answer. And I know that it's difficult, and actually, we have done, comparatively to other states, we've done a fairly good job. I actually have the statistics on that were given to me just this week. And so overall, when it comes to comparing us to other states, but it's still our most vulnerable population, and that's the population we really need to be focusing on the most, is those populations that are in care facilities, not only nursing homes, but you have the assisted living facilities. I have one in my district, and those types of facilities are the areas that we have to be the most careful and most protective. So I appreciate what we're doing. It just seems like after 6 months, we would have a little better idea of how to keep it out. And I think that's a frustration more than a question. I know it's a novel virus, which means it's new. We don't know a lot about it, and we're trying to figure it out still. But it seems like after 6 months, we'd have an idea. It has been told to me several times, in fact, just last night by Dr. Scrace, that this passes from one person to another. I guess the problem must be that even when you're testing, you can test positive and 10 minutes later you've got it. I don't know how that exactly works, or how that is, or test negative and 10 minutes later you're positive. So the test is only good for about 30 seconds. For that exact time frame, you were negative. And so it's really difficult, and I don't know how that happens if you're not exposed, being somewhere. I guess we're gonna have to figure out a test to show that you've been exposed to it, not just that you have it, so that you know to quarantine yourself. But that's a very difficult situation, and we just really need to deal with it with these homes, these facilities. I know it's too much to ask I think the only way you could protect them 100% is to ask all the workers to not go home and to stay there at the facility permanently until this whole thing is over, and that's unreasonable. And so I don't think you'll ever get that. That would be the only way you could protect them 100%. But I do think we're doing a fairly good job of it. But this is the area we really need to be focused on, and not shutting down the rest of the state. We need to be focused on taking care of our most vulnerable population. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you, Senator. And next up, we have Representative Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you both for your presentations, very informative. I have two questions for Mr. Burmeister regarding the nursing homes. I heard you say that visitation in a nursing home is a critical element. And you said also that we are very, very restrictive in New Mexico. And as I thought about some of your comments, I began to wonder what is going to be the future of our nursing home occupancy as a result of the way we manage COVID-19. What's it going to do to their vacancy rates? And the reason behind that question is I've heard a lot of folks say, I'm adding on to my house. I'm not going to let my parents be put in a nursing home where they're no longer accessible. The government has the ability to cut them off from my touch. I've got friends right now that are having apartments added on to homes over in Texas, and their families are moving their senior people out of New Mexico into Texas to keep them over there. because it's managed differently there. And so I began to wonder, are you tracking vacancy rates in nursing homes as a result of COVID-19? And are you tracking what can you attribute those vacancy rates to?
Mr. Chair, was that representative? I couldn't see.
Yes, I'm sorry, Representative Randy Crowder, and I'm way up here in the corner. You can't see me, I'm hiding.
Representative, thank you for your question. That is a difficult one and actually above my kind of pay grade when it comes to that. Do we track vacancy rates? Absolutely. We know what percentages of what capacity we have in New Mexico as far as bed counts. We have approximately 7,000 beds. What effect that has with COVID now is going to be an interesting one, and I will have that data for you. I will be able to tell you exactly the vacancy rates in not just a specific facility, but also statewide. I also have heard exactly what you've heard. We've had residents, family members pull their family members out of assisted living homes and nursing homes and take them home. But we've also had continued admissions as this has happened. I think you guys are aware we have a COVID positive nursing home that was converted, Canyon Transitional, that's been very successful for us to be able to take care of COVID positive residents to that effect. I think, you know, my personal perspective is we're always going to need some level of care for our seniors. The question is what is that going to evolve into and what is that going to look at? I can tell you, you know, the benefit of having a governor that was the secretary and understands long-term care is she is absolutely a visionary when it comes to taking care of seniors. This has been a huge area of focus for her. And, you know, I'll wait and see what plans she puts out and where we go from here. But as of right now, you know, within my division in particular, it has been about surveillance, support, safety, resources to nursing homes to keep people safe in these homes. And that's a big distinction that we make. Nursing homes or vet centers, you know, these are people's individual homes, and it's important if they choose to live there that we take care of them where they live. And that's an important component. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that very much. I would look forward to any data you can come up with on how the vacancy rates track with the nursing homes as a result of COVID or after we go through this COVID-19 experience. I would be very interested in seeing what actually happens to the occupancy rates. My second question is a little more personal question. I did have a 45-minute conversation with Dr. Grace a few nights ago, kind of along these same lines, but I've had several of the nursing home folks say that the death rate in their nursing home is going up. It has nothing to do with COVID-19. It's not related at all to the disease itself. However, they believe it is related to the isolation and that residents are dying of a broken heart. I've actually had my mother, who's been in a nursing home for 16 years, make that very comment. My heart is breaking. And I wonder, do you have a mechanism or a method to measure the increased deaths that are not a result of COVID, but as a result of isolation from their families?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator, Representative, that's an excellent question. And I will tell you, you know, I also participate on a statewide call with CMS with our sister states that provide long-term care. This is not just New Mexico's long-term care facilities. This is nationwide. As a result of this sequestering and having families at home or families not having visitation, the change in their structure, in their rituals, in their lives has definitely had an impact. You know, I can tell you, you know, I'm a behavioral health therapist. It's an important, that engagement is such an important part of our daily lives, whether it's with, you know, our moms, our dads, our family members. That engagement is so incredibly important. I have the unfortunate part of fielding letters, emails, and phone calls from family members that are desperate to engage their family members, and that they're worried about that decline that happens as a result of this separation. I know Secretary Scrace and his leadership, is moving in a direction to allow as much visitation as safely as possible. We're not there yet. I think we've moved slow, which has protected our seniors, but there is definitely an effect of that. How they track and trend and what the fallout of that is and the statistics around that will be something that will be looked at. I will tell you, under Secretary Holtram's leadership in the Ombudsman program, there's been an enormous amount of engagement work with the tablets, with trying to connect people as best they can with this distancing as much as possible. I'm on a daily call with that team, and they are continually engaging in the nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and they report exactly what you and Dr. or Secretary Scrace have reported. The worry of the duration of this and the time away from family, very simply. I know that's something that we will be trending and looking at going forward.
Thank you again for your comments. I do sense that you're a caring individual, and I appreciate that. I do think, though, we are going to have to measure outcomes at the end of this. We're going to have to know, we're going to have a report card. How did we do? What is our grade? What is our outcome? And to do that, we're going to need to have some kind of information and statistics on deaths in the nursing homes that were not directly related to COVID, but related to isolation. So hopefully you will have a way to track that. You will be able to provide us a report. If you could get it to Jared someday when you get one, so that Jared could disseminate it to us, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you both for your presentations. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.
Thank you, Representative. Any other, Representative Elkan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy you remembered my name. Mr. Chairman and members of the panel, I know that most all of your questions have been because of COVID, and I don't think that was the reason that your presentation, why you were presenting here today. It's pretty basically your presentation was supposed to be about our senior veterans and Veterans Hospital. So now I want to ask a question that I hope pertains to what your presentation was about. And what I'm asking is, I'm an old man, okay? I'm already getting to the point where I have always told my daughter and my wife, if I get to that point where there's nothing you can do with me anymore, send me to the veterans. They're responsible for me, okay? And my question is, what financial burden, what would a veteran, or what kind of out-of-pocket money does a veteran have to pay to be in a veterans nursing home?
I'm not sure who was asking that question. I'm sorry, it's kind of key. But it varies and it depends. If the veteran is 70 to 100% veteran, then they don't pay nothing. It's 100% covered by the VA. We also assist the veterans with applying for Medicaid if needed, obtaining an income diversion trust to get on Medicaid, and then they pay a certain amount minus, what they're allowed for the Medicaid allotment. So it truly depends on the veteran, whether they're married or not married, if we're looking at a Medicaid situation, because with the Medicaid veteran, then, there's a possibility that if there's a spouse at home, that spouse will be able to keep the income. So it's very hard to state what the rate would be. It's, to the veteran itself and what percentage they are of disability.
Mr. Chair, I had a real hard time understanding what was going on there. Is it possible, I guess the best way to do this, is it possible for you to get us that information in writing for the members of the committee to be able to look at it?
Would I send that to Jared?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Any other legislators with questions? Representative Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to tell the presenters, thank you for doing your presentation today. I'll share with you, my father-in-law was actually a resident of the Veterans Home back in 15, October 14 through July, I believe, of 15. The only reason that we moved him out of the Veterans Home was that it was a three and a half hour drive to go to visit him. I wish it was closer to our home. So I'm familiar with the home. I can't say enough good things about it. My only question was, I was noticing in the presentation that it talks a lot about the one-on-one activities that are going on with the activities staff. And I was just curious on how many I guess, staff members are actually doing those services.
I'm sorry, it's very hard to tell who's talking, so I'm not sure if it's senator or representative, so I apologize. It's truly all of us that are engaging with the veterans at this time. And when I say all of us, I have requested that all of our staff, from our central supply people to our maintenance team to administration, myself, I'm a social worker first and foremost. That is what my degree's in, besides a licensed nursing home administrator. And I truly believe in getting out there and engaging with our veterans. And so, we are out there and it's all of us. Whether it's a simple ball toss, whether it's taking them outside, it's taking all of us right now to, address the emotional struggles that our veterans and, their widowed spouses are experiencing at this current time with COVID. So I hope that I have 191 employees is what we currently have. And so I would say probably, 60 to 75% of them are out there with us, conducting those one-on-ones. Of course, when the CNAs and the nurses are providing the one-on-one care, they're engaging with the resident as they're providing the care. But all the ancillary staff is being asked to go out there and do it with them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that answer. I do, like I said, I do appreciate the Veterans Home. And I know back in 2014 when I would speak with the staff that had worked there, there was a majority of the people that had commuted, they would commute from Las Cruces and so on. Is that still predominantly, or do you have a lot of people that actually live in the area that are working there?
The majority of my staff do live here in Sierra County. I do have, that I'm aware of, probably 4 or 5 that commute from Las Cruces back and forth, but the majority of the staff lives here and or their contract staff. So the contract staff does reside in Sierra County while they're working here. And I have about 40 contract staff members, and that's licensed nurses and certified nurses aides.
Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. I appreciate it. And like I said, I appreciate everything that you guys do. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Representative. Next up, we have Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank both the presenters for your information. Ms. Sullivan, is the new facility, I guess it's the dementia Alzheimer's unit, is that at capacity?
Sir, at this current time, my 4 units that are open, there's 5 units at the annex. 4 out of my 5 are currently open. The reason that my 5th is not open is because we're still waiting on some repairs from the settling of the building. We've had GSD and FMD engaged with me completely to try and get the repairs from the settling of the building. Once that area is completed, then I have no doubt that I can fill that building quickly, and that is 13 beds.
Thank you for that. I also was going to ask a question in reference to what Representative Black brought up. I did receive a number of calls from some folks that are familiar with the facility in Truth or Consequences. But I was glad to see that you're now holding bingos with the appropriate distance. And some of those individuals were actually very concerned about they not having those opportunities for their activities. Mr. Chairman and Ms. Sullivan, does your staff include a recreational therapist?
Representative and Mr. Chair and Committee, it really, we have a qualified activity director, but not a recreational therapist. We do, in my presentation, I talked about bringing in a consultant. The consultant that we're looking at bringing in is well known throughout New Mexico. And the reason that we're bringing her on is to work in collaboration with our qualified activity director and her staff to maneuver through the difficult times of COVID. One of my many hats that I wore through my 30-year career of long-term care is a director of activities. And I did that for about 3.5 years. And I know the importance of, meeting those psychosocial needs of the veterans. And in this unusual time, because we can't I know some of my veterans have been very, very frustrated about not being able to play poker. But there is just no way that at this current time we've asked, and I know that Secretary Holton Lopez and Mr. Burmeister are working on trying to see, what kind of different changes that we can do. We were able to safely do bingo at a social distance because we're able to disinfect each card and everything, immediately after and keep them. Poker is a little bit harder because it's more intimate. So we're really trying to see what we can do to meet their needs, meet their requests if we can, but also stay in compliance with the infection control practices.
Well, thank you for that, because as we recognize, the Veterans Home in TRC is very important to us veterans and services that are provided there, so thank you so much. Mr. Burmeister, are you familiar with the Fort Baird Medical Center Veterans Home?
Mr. Chair, Representative Martinez, I am familiar with Fort Baird's nursing facility. Yes, sir.
Is the Veterans Unit going to be expanded, Mr. Chairman?
That is an excellent question, and actually I do not have that, but I can get that information for you unless Juliet has that. I'm not part of the operations part of that. I'm part of the oversight, but I can get that information for you, Representative.
Thank you for that. That would be greatly appreciated. A question for both of you. Ms. Sullivan, you mentioned that you had one physician and one on contract. Is that coverage for 24 hours, 7 days a week?
I'm sorry, did you say a physician?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a full-time physician on staff, but we also have a contract to cover him. He's on 24/7, so he is on call 24/7. Our medical director is, but we also have a contract physician in the event that he is wishing to go on vacation or something. We have a backup so that we have physicians available 24/7. We also have our pharmacist clinician that is also on call 24/7.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I guess another thought that comes to mind is we have the New Mexico residency program in several locations across the state. Is this something that the Veterans Home could take advantage of, or is that not possible?
representative, or I'm not sure who's speaking, I apologize. I'm not sure what that program is because I am new, into the state environment as well as the state veterans home. I've been here 9 months. And what was that called again, sir? And I'll definitely look into it.
This would probably be a question for the Department of Health, since the residency program, residency physician program is primarily run through the Department of Health.
Chris, are you able to answer that question, sir?
And I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the question.
Ms. Brewmeister, is the New Mexico Primary Care Residency Program.
The New Mexico Primary Care Residency. Could you expand the question just a little bit? I'm sorry, I'm trying to put it together.
This is a program that's run through UNM, Health Science. It's a program that provides opportunities for those medical student residents or students that have completed their medical school and are doing their residency. And there is a program which provides residents, those students, mostly in the rural areas. It's about a 3-year program so they can complete their obligation to become a full-fledged doctor.
And Mr. Chair, Representative, now I understand your question. Unfortunately, I am not in the loop with that, but I am going to take down that question and the previous question that you asked me, I will also get that information for you.
Thank you very much. If you would get it to Mr. Fleetwood so he could share it with the rest of the committee. Thank you both for your presentations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. So any other representatives or senators with a question? Okay, if not, in the end, I do have a question, but in the interest of time, we're running behind. I'd like to stay on schedule. I'll give Mr. Burmeister a call because I had a nursing home in my district that suffered 16 deaths. So I have a question from him about that. Does Mr. Garcia have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm having a hard time understanding the answers or the questions, but I'm going to ask you one more time, Mr. Chair, and this is to, I don't know who in the committee. Representative Alcon asked the question of how much out of pocket it would cost veterans. My question is, if a veteran is 100% disabled or 70% disabled and he winds up in a nursing home, does he lose his benefits that he's getting, like his pay, taxes, and so forth?
I believe that you asked, Mr. Chair and representatives and senators, if they're 70 to 100% veteran, if they lose their benefits, and that would be no, sir. They come into the facility as 100%, we call them 100%er at the veterans home. And what that means is they get to keep their income, and the VA pays for 100% of their care. Whether, it's mental health services, labs, medication, all of that is covered at 100%.
Mr. Chair and Madam, I'm having a real hard time understanding what you're saying. I guess the question would be, will a veteran lose his benefits that he's receiving prior to going into a nursing home?
No.
Okay, ma'am. Maybe we can talk offline because it's really hard to understand with these things. So thank you for that answer, and we'll get in touch with you, okay? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. Hearing, unless there's more questions, we'll move on to the next presentation. Again, I want to thank Ms. Sullivan and Mr. Burmeister for their informative and interesting presentations. Thank you for being with us today. So next on the agenda, we have Ted Skibiak, who is the part of the outreach team with Forward Flag, and he's going to talk about veteran suicide prevention. Thank you for being here. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Garcia, thank you for inviting me. Okay. Thank you, sir. Representative Garcia, thank you for inviting me, Mr. Chairman. General or Secretary Griego, nice to see you again. My name is Ted Skibiak. I'm 100% disabled or 100% service connected for disability. I'm a retired command sergeant major. I'm from the Army. I'm not only an Army veteran, but a combat veteran. And since I've lost the ability to do that, I've become part of a group called Forward Flag. Forward Flag is a division of Straight Scoop for vets and friends. And one of our I'm going to just tell you a little bit about all of our operations. Go ahead, next slide. Our primary mission is suicide prevention, veteran suicide prevention. Go ahead. Is there any way that I can get some pamphlets distributed to all of you?
Yeah.
They're on the bench over there. And one of the things we do is we try and do sorry, don't get a bleed in your brain. You can't remember what you're trying to say. One of the things we do is try and get people to take suicide prevention classes online. We've got, and I'm going to have one of those brochures handed out to you. It's going to look something like what's on the screen there. That bookmark has an address to a website where you can take a 1-hour online suicide prevention class, and Straight Scoop or Forward Flag pays for that class. No, I don't need them. Thank you. Then the trifold brochure tells you a little bit more about our operations. Next slide, please. Go ahead. So some of the things that we've got. So we do have training. We train law enforcement agencies, suicide prevention, not only for how to handle suicidal people, but also law enforcement has a very high suicide rate as well. And usually 20 to 50% of a law enforcement agency is veterans. So it's another way that we can look out for our veterans by training these law enforcement officers so that they can keep an eye on each other and hopefully their families to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms of somebody that may be suicidal, learn how to talk to them, and learn how to get them help. We also do veteran-specific QPR training. What QPR is a evidence-based suicide prevention out of Spokane, Washington, and it stands for question to ask those questions and make sure you ask that question. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? The P is persuade the person to go get some help, whether it be into a hospital or into a non-hospital setting where they can get some professional help. And then R is to refer them to that help. It's kind of like CPR. It's something for the immediate trying to take care of them. It's not going to, by itself, keep somebody alive, but we're a step in that program to be able to get them to the facility, which can help them. We do veteran-specific and all of these are good for continuing education for the law enforcement officers, for the social workers. We teach at schools. Go ahead, next one. We do rural outreach. We attempt to help with employment issues, resumes, connections with workforce solutions and transportation. We attempt to help with housing issues, legal issues. Most of us are mentors for the Veterans Court program in the Albuquerque area, both the district court as well as the Metro Court. We can help enroll people for our veterans for benefits through utilizing the e-benefits program. We can assist with assembling all the documents that they need to get their paperwork put in for benefits. Our bunkers, next slide please. This is a 27-foot bumper pole travel trailer that we've been using for several years. Since I became part of the program in 2015, we've been utilizing this one. We deployed it to any place in New Mexico. We'll go to any special occasion that somebody asks us to come to, and we will do our outreach at that point. Just try and get to talk to veterans and their families, try and get them to take that 1-hour online suicide prevention class. The idea is that if we surround the veteran with people that understand suicide prevention, then maybe one of them will recognize those signs and symptoms, be able to talk to the veteran and get them help. Asking the veteran to sign up for a class or a program or call a phone number, it works for some, but it doesn't work for all. We're losing still about 20 veterans a day. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So about this year, about 28 individuals have completed that online class that you all have information to. We've had 8 one in person and 7 virtual classes for QPR. We've trained a total of 82 people in with the gatekeeper training or learning that basic suicide prevention. We've reached 1,050 veterans or people with the bunkers when we've had them out. The Albuquerque Wellness Center has been visited over 1,000 times this year by veterans and their families and friends. Next slide, please. This is a new outreach vehicle. It's a 41-foot Bluebird Motorhome that was donated by a veteran's family after we were able to help him. They said as long as we could reach more veterans with it, we could have it. We've had it wrapped. That's how I met you, Representative. And we call it our veteran magnet because it does attract veterans. This is a picture of it when we were in Taos. Go ahead, next slide, please. This is our fixed location, which is at 2100 Aztec in Albuquerque. Next slide. There we've got service dog training. We bring veterans in, and Assistance Dogs of the West from Santa Fe brings in dogs, and we have the veterans train those dogs. We have archery lessons, creative arts, yoga, gym, all these other programs that you can take a look at. CrossFit training, veterans benefit services, We have music classes, anything to keep the veteran from isolating. Isolation leads to a higher suicide rate. That depression and isolation that you were talking about, Senator Crowler, or no, Representative Crowler, exactly the same thing. That isolation helps lead to suicide, as well as in the elderly just giving up. Next slide. Okay, Forward Flag provides, we also provide consistent and inclusive opportunities for veterans to connect for physical and social needs. We host regular activities when we can. Our numbers have been way down this year, of course, because of COVID. Next slide, please. Again, we have the different training. Most of our people are certified peer support workers. We do the Veterans Justice Outreach. The full battle rattle that's mentioned there is the guitar lessons and music lessons. We have a member of Disabled American Veterans that comes in and helps with attempt to get disability programs for veterans. Go ahead, next slide, please. Our training, all the CPSWs have gone through the New Mexico 40-hour class and then taken the certification test to become a certified peer support worker. Most of us are, like I said, are mentors for the justice program in the Albuquerque area. I think there would be very beneficial if we could wind up getting a statewide veterans court program. It's shown to have a very low recidivism rate if the veteran completes that program, and it also helps that veteran get through some of the problems that he had, whether it be drug or alcohol abuse, to lead him to commit those crimes, him or her to commit those crimes. Next slide is just some of our, go ahead, next slide, please. Some of our support, the QPR Institute in Spokane, Washington, Rocky Mountain Merrick, which is part of the VA, New Mexico Office of Peer Support and Recovery, LifeLink here in Santa Fe, and the Department of Behavioral Health. The next slide is just to give you a sense of what we do, and the link down on the bottom is so that to our current schedule, which is very limited comparatively to what it used to be. At this time, I'll stand for questions. Chairman.
Well, thank you for your presentation. And now we'll open it up to questions. Anyone have a question? Representative Garrett, who'll be our first questionnaire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Is it Skibiak?
No, it's Skibiak.
Skibiak. Okay, Skibiak. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I was looking at the website, and I was particularly interested. You have one program called CALM, Counseling on Access to Lethal Means, which is a really serious issue in New Mexico. Can you just talk about that? I don't know if you have any statistics or anecdotes, but has that been effective? Has it been widely accessed?
Chairman, Representative, I don't have any statistics on that one. I'm primarily do the outreach, and I don't have personal insight into that information or that program.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, and I'll call you Mr. Ted.
That works great.
just thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for your own service. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. And next up, we have Representative Garcia, to be followed by Representative Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ted.
That works, sir.
I want to give you a committee here, just a little brief thing, how you met this gentleman. I was riding my motorcycle up from Grants for LFC in Red River, and I got into a hailstorm by Eagle Nest, and I was under the canopy, Mr. Chairman, staying out of the weather, and I looked over there and I saw that motorhome that's on this picture parked there, and I thought it was a veterans organization from the state. So I walked up there and I introduced myself. I didn't tell them who I was. I just walked up there and we started chatting. And what really impressed me about these people, that they're sitting out there in the hailstorm, you know, they didn't pack it up and just go home, you know. And I started talking to them, you know, I said, what are you guys doing? And we chatted more, Mr. Chairman, and members of this committee. And I was really impressed on their drive, their motivation to what they're doing, you know, their hearts into what they're doing. And then we got to talking more, and then I introduced myself and I asked him if he would come up and do a presentation in front of this committee. Because it's awful important when you find somebody that is so committed to what they're doing that, you know, it just kind of just grabbed my eye for some reason. You know, I said, you know what, these people are for real, you know, because people come and go all the time, and you know, I really appreciate what you're doing. And, you know, like we spoke then a couple of 3 weeks ago, if you save one veteran, you know, we saved a whole bunch of it. You know, that's our goal.
Right.
You know, we can't save the world, but if we save one of them, you know, you've done your job. And I really appreciate what you're doing, you know, and I wish, there might be ways that the state can help you, because I know it's expensive, and we could work on that in the future. But I wanted this committee and the people in the state to know that you're out there trying to serve people, trying to serve our veterans. And then you mentioned also you help police officers.
Yes.
You know, that's they're responders too, just like military, you know.
Yes.
And I appreciate that, you know, that you're not just stuck on one deal. You know, veterans is really important to me. But if you can help other people get along, or other people help other people, that's the main thing. To me, it's the main thing. And I really appreciate you being here, Ted. And you know, it's very educational, and I hope we can work down the line to help each other out, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Speaking about police officers, I was a police officer and paramedic in the state. I retired from Rio Rancho as a paramedic police officer. And that, like I said, the suicide rate there is high as well. And then you turn around and you look at our children. The second leading cause of death in our children in 10-year-olds is suicide. And I've spoken to so many kids out there that have told me that they've had classmates either kill themselves or try to. And if we can educate our adults on suicide prevention, and then if we can get them to educate those children, maybe those children can help another child out in their schools. This is, like you say, this is not just a veterans problem. It's a huge problem, and the class that the 1 hour online class is not veteran specific. It's for anybody to take care of anybody.
Thank you, Ted, Mr. Chairman. And as you well know, the suicide rate in New Mexico on veterans is going sky high, especially with this pandemic that's going on.
Yes,
you know, more veterans are doing it, and you know, I really appreciate the outreach. And like I said, if we could help you, that's what we're here for. And I'm pretty sure everybody in this committee will tell you the same thing.
Thank you, Representative Garcia.
Thank you, sir, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Anyone else? Senator or Representative Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I won't try to say your name because I will cut it up. I just have a few personal comments. I am glad to see there are organizations such as yours that have come about in recent years. My father actually committed suicide in 1998. He was a 3-time Vietnam veteran and retired from the military. And back in 1998, when he was going through crisis, we did not have services in New Mexico. And it was very discouraging to realize that there was no outreach, there was no services provided. So I just wanted to tell you thank you. As a suicide survivor, I guess you could say, it is appreciated. Thank you.
Any other?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Garcia.
Just one more thing, Ted, and for the committee to know that it's really nice for these people to do outreach in rural New Mexico. That's number one. Because you know Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces, they're pretty well set up, but rural New Mexico is struggling.
Right.
And I really, really appreciate you being out there. When I saw you that day, I said, you know what, this is pretty neat because middle of nowhere, and you guys were there. I really appreciate that, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, what are your sources of revenue?
Sir, we can't go back to a couple of slides. On the presentation that we went through, on the support slide, it showed that we're supported by the QPR Institute out of Spokane, Washington. We're supported, sorry, I should talk into here. We're supported by the QPR Institute out of Spokane, Washington. We're supported by Rocky Mountain Merrick, which is a portion of the VA which is studying out of Denver, that is studying suicide and suicide prevention. LifeLink and the New Mexico OPRI, Office of Peer Recovery and Engagement.
Oh, thank you. See, you don't get any funding from the state of New Mexico?
Sir, the Office of Peer Support and Engagement is through New Mexico Behavioral Health, and we do get some funding through the state of New Mexico through them.
Does that make up 10%, 5%?
I don't have that information, but I can get it for you, sir.
So you obviously would like more money from the state?
Sir, I didn't come in here to ask for money. I just came in here to tell you what we do.
Oh, but you wouldn't refuse it?
Probably not.
Okay. Well, that's the only thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt. When I met these gentlemen to begin with, he never did ask for any money. That wasn't the point of this meeting. The point of this meeting was to make veterans aware that there is other help out there to these people. But he never did mention funding. I mentioned that because it would be nice if we could help them. And I'm not saying we can, but if it could, that would be nice. But his goal is to help veterans, and that was just about the bottom line. Thank you.
And if any of you see us out there, stop by for a cup of coffee. We've almost always got it brewing.
Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, I'd just like to, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. And good luck, and I admire all the wonderful services that you're providing to veterans who are in great need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Representatives, Senators.
So our next and last item on the agenda this afternoon is Larry Campos, Director of Field Services Division of the Veterans Services Department. Mr. Campos.
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, thank you for this time to have an opportunity to talk about a new program for the Veterans Administration. I'm Larry Campos. I'm the Director of Field Operations Divisions for the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. I want to acknowledge Secretary Griego, who's online, and also Deputy Secretary Osterhage. The VA has reinitialized a program called the Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers. The Caregiver Act is similar to the aid and attendance provided by the VA for veterans needing assistance in the home. The difference is that the Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, the final regulation was published July 31st of this year, and it becomes effective October 1st of this year. So there's two phases that this program is going to take place. Currently, only eligible veterans who incurred or aggravated a serious injury in the line of duty or after September 11th, 2001 are eligible for this program. The VA will expand the eligibility in October 1st of 2020. The first phase of the program becomes effective October 1st and will expand eligibility to include veterans who incurred injury in the line of duty in the active military, naval, or air service on or before May 7th, 1975. The second phase will begin October 1st of 2022 and will include veterans from all eras, regardless of when the veteran's serious injury occurred in the line of duty. This program provides family caregivers of eligible veterans certain benefits such as training, respite care, counseling, technical support, travel benefits, a monthly stipend, and access to health care if provided through CHAP VA. This regulation focuses on eligible veterans with moderate to severe needs. Under the final rule, a veteran must have a service-connected disability rating by the VA of 70% or more to qualify for this program. This can be a single disability rating or a combined rating. The requirement is in the final rule's definition of serious injury. Additionally, the veteran must be in need of personal care services. This means that the eligible veteran requires in-person personal care services from another person to support the veteran's safety. Under the final rule, the veteran must be in need of personal care services based on an ability to perform active daily living or a need of supervision, protection, or instruction. The VA defines need for supervision, protection, or instruction as the individual having a functional impairment that directly impacts his or her ability to maintain his or personal safety on a daily basis. The VA defines inability to perform an activity of daily living as a veteran or service member requiring personal care services each time he or she completes one or more of the following: dressing or undressing oneself, bathing, grooming, adjusting any special prosthetic or orthopedic appliance, toileting or attending to toileting, feeding oneself, mobility such as walking, going upstairs, transferring from bed to chair, and administration of medications. Under the final rule, a legacy participant is defined as an eligible veteran whose family caregivers were approved and designated by the VA before the effective date of 1 October 2020. The eligible veteran continues to be considered a legacy participant so long as his or her primary family caregiver continues to be approved and designated as such. If an application is received by the Department of Veteran Affairs on or after the effective date of the final rule that results in approval and designation of the same, the primary family caregiver the veteran or service member will no longer be considered a legacy participant. Legacy participants remain eligible until October 1, 2021. During this one-year period, a family caregiver of a legacy participant or legacy applicant will not have his or her designation revoked based on the legacy participant not meeting the new eligibility criteria. Under the final rule, legacy applicants and participants will be reassessed under the new eligibility criteria within 12 months of the effective date of October 1st, 2021. Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, I sincerely apologize for not having a PowerPoint presentation for you at this time, but if you're interested in this information, I would be happy to forward the information. Are there any questions?
Representative Garcia has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Larry, what do you consider, I don't know if I should ask this question, but what do you consider that is qualifying? You said serious disabilities. Who makes that decision on what a serious disability is?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, the Veterans Administration has provided a list of disabilities that are considered serious. Number one, the veteran has to be 70% or higher, whether it's a single disability or a combination of all disabilities totaling 70 or higher. The primary conditions are those conditions that apply to activity of daily living. These are things that we take for granted that we normally do without thinking, such as dressing or undressing, bathing, grooming yourself, going to the restroom for toilet situations, feeding oneself, mobility, and administration of medications. So once a claim is submitted, the VA will determine how many of these characteristics fit the veteran. And that is how the stipend is determined. The stipend is determined based on the percentage of disability and the number of activity of daily living criteria that is met. The more criteria that is met, the higher the stipend will be. But these are the standard under the new law that becomes effective October 1st. These are the items that are being looked at.
Mr. Chair and Larry, I understand that criteria, but I hope it doesn't get into a deal that is going to be the same thing that I went through to get my disability. It took me 42 years to get it, you know, because the paperwork and the bureaucracy of the VA is not in the right direction. And if they're going to start asking people to go back into the hospital to prove these disabilities, is that what's going to happen? Are we going to go through the same process to get over this little hump?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, the law is pretty clear on the procedures that are going to take place. The legacy veterans, or those veterans that are currently receiving the benefit, what's going to happen is, as of 1 October of this year, all veterans that may qualify for this benefit will be looked at from before May 7th, 1975 and back. That includes all Vietnam era veterans and Korea veterans, and maybe any World War II veterans that are still out there. The legacy veteran are those that are currently receiving the stipend and the benefit. These are veterans that qualified after 9/11. And so these veterans are they're not going to lose their benefit for the first year, but within 12 months, they will receive a reevaluation of their conditions of their basic needs and reassessed. And so the goal for this program is that within 2 years, by the year October 1, 2022, this program will be one solid program, and all the legacy veterans will be rolled up into this program.
Mr. Chair, Larry, I don't know if I understood you right. Did you say that the VA is going to look at all veterans that could qualify for this, or does the veteran have to apply for it himself?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, yes, within 1 year, the goal is by October 1st of 2021, during this 12-month period, all of the legacy veterans or veterans that are currently enrolled are going to be reassessed. And doesn't necessarily mean that they'll lose the benefit, but they're going to be reassessed to see where they're at in the program, and they'll be either maintained on the program or taken off the program. The main thing is that this is going to prevent a lot of fraud and waste that may have transpired before. This is going to make sure that the veteran that is receiving the benefit is actually not being able to do his daily activities of daily living. So yes, between October 1st and next year, October 1st, 2021, the next 12 months, all of the veterans that are currently receiving the benefit are going to be reassessed. These veterans and sponsors do not need to reapply for the benefit. Otherwise, if they do reapply for the benefit, they lose the legacy benefit, and they'll be reassessed under the new program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry, are you saying that every veteran that has a disability is going to be reassessed?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, only the veterans that are on the program are going to be reassessed. Not every veteran that has a disability would qualify for this program, but if there's a veteran out there that needs assistance with his daily living activities, then certainly they should apply for the program. But the VA will not come out and give it to you. You have to apply for it. And yes, the legacy veteran, or the ones that are currently on the program, are going to be reassessed to make sure that they qualify for the program.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you, Judy, for being on, and Larry, thank you for being on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Elcon, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. Mr. Chair and members of the panel, I guess my question is, what is the process that a veteran would have to go through to apply for, where would they find the application?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, the process is to file a claim going through either a veteran service officer or one of the veteran service organizations, such as the DAV, the VFW, American Legion. Our VSOs in our state that come under the Department of Veteran Services are fully capable of assisting veterans apply for this benefit. Where we reach I don't want to say a situation, but a lot of times when a veteran has power of attorney with another veteran service organization, such as the DAV, the VFW, we have to coordinate with them to let them know that we're helping the veteran apply for this benefit. But we will not turn any veteran away. We will help all veterans that come to us, regardless of who their power of attorney is. We just have to extend that communication out to them.
Okay, so my question is, Mr. Chair, I guess, who would be the point person at the state veterans level that a person would contact?
Mr. Chair, representatives and senators, anybody can contact me directly, but any of our VSOs in the Department of Veteran Services can be contacted. We have a complete list of our VSOs statewide on our website, and so veterans and participants that want to apply can reach out to any of the VSOs statewide, anywhere in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you, Representative. Any other legislators with questions? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank Secretary Griego for being here. This concludes today's agenda, and I want to thank all the legislators who participated in today's meeting. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Quick question. To get the stipend and mileage reimbursement, just see Mr. Fleetwood fleetingly leaves.